It's a simple question. Do you know what you are eating? Do you want to know what you're eating? Do you actually care what you are eating? What is in your food? What ingredients are in your food? What's in the food that you are not just eating yourself, but feeding your children? Do you care? Do you want to know? Do you know? These are fundamental questions concerning our food that we have to face today. Now, I want to know what I am eating. And I especially want to know whether any of the food that I am eating contains anything that has been genetically modified or genetically engineered. Because I do not trust anything that is genetically modified or genetically engineered. I do not want to eat this. If I check the ingredients on anything that I eat, on any kind of food, and I always check the ingredients list on anything. Because luckily we live in Europe in a place where manufacturers are mandated, are obliged by law to list everything that's in the food products that they make. So we have that luxury. Some countries, they can't. We in Europe, we luckily can, and we can check what's in our food. We can read this. And I always read the ingredients list of every product that I buy or I'm thinking about buying. And that is why I do not buy a lot of products from, let's say, the supermarket, because I see what kind of junk is in there. But let's not talk about, poisons such as the regular E numbers. Let's not talk about poisons for your health like glucose syrup or inverted sugar starch or stuff like that. Let's not talk about those. Let's talk specifically about GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and whether they are in our food and whether they belong in our food, and especially whether you as a consumer should know if they are in your food, because that is very important. Right now in the EU, we have some frankly fantastic laws actually that regulate this stuff, that regulate this shit, which prescribe that if you as a producer want to put any genetically modified organisms, any genetically modified material in a food product, then you need to label that food product so that people who buy it know that it contains a GMO or a genetically modified ingredient. But there is a problem, and the problem is that the European Commission wants to get rid of this legal obligation to label every genetically modified product for what it is. They want to get rid of this. See, there are a whole bunch of nice laws in the EU which regulate this sort of shit, and one of them is the regulation EC number 1830/2003, which is titled "On the Traceability and Labeling of Genetically Modified Organisms and the Traceability of Food and Feed Products from GMOs." And a part of that, like an excerpt from that, reads very simply. It's a very simply straightforward piece of legislation which says labeling pre-packaged products containing GMOs should be labeled. This product contains genetically modified organisms, or the name of the organism. So this is a piece of legislation. It is a rule that is not interpretable. It is what it is. It says what it is, and it very plainly says that you as a producer, if you are intending to put any kind of GMO, genetically modified material, in food, then you need to put a big ass label on there saying this contains genetically modified organisms, this is the kind of organism it contains, so that you as a consumer can say, well, I am fine with this, I'm cool with this, let's eat this, I don't care. Or on the other hand, you can say, well, I don't want to eat this. I don't. Let's not buy this then. Let's go for biological. Let's go for ecological. Let's go for the way nature intended it to be. That's a choice you can make at that point, and this is a choice we can still make at this point in Europe because of this law and laws like it. So that's actually quite fantastic, you know, very common sense law, and we should be glad it's there. It's like one of the few things where you can actually say, yeah, the EU is delivered over there, right? You can, one of the few rules that actually make sense, and we should fight to keep this. Unfortunately, the European Commission said, and it's specifically the European Commission President, that's von der Leyen, that, yeah, let's not say what I actually think about her, because then that's a whole different topic. I mean, we need to get rid of her. It's as simple as that. Let's put it like this. But von der Leyen and her commissioner colleague or subordinate, or however you want to call this, Timmermans, the Green Pope of Europe, they want to get rid of this legal requirement to label genetically engineered ingredients in your food. They want to get rid of this. They want to deregulate genetically modified and genetically engineered ingredients. Specifically what they've said, and they've said this end of last month, so July, end of July, they came out and they said that they want to deregulate new genetically modified ingredients, products, which have been genetically modified with novel techniques, not the old techniques, no, novel techniques, new techniques. And when they talk about novel techniques, they mean CRISPR, by the way, which allows a geneticist to basically target one specific gene and switch it off or switch it on or whatever, or go play with that. It is targeted genetic engineering. That's what CRISPR means. That's what CRISPR is. It's a technique which allows you to genetically engineer gene by gene, pretty much. And the European Commission has now said that this technique, this new CRISPR technique, is so fantastic. Let's just deregulate that. Let's just allow anything that's made with CRISPR on the market, and you don't even need to tell people that they're eating stuff that's made with CRISPR, because it's so fantastic and apparently it's so safe, even though it's based on no science whatsoever that for some reason CRISPR would be safer than old techniques. There's no proof of this whatsoever, that genetic engineering with new techniques is somehow better, safe, 100% safe. There's no risk whatsoever than genetic engineering with old techniques. It's like it's a pure wish fulfillment fantasy when it comes to the European Commission at this point. And you have to wonder, why the hell are they doing this? Well, I mean, the reason they're doing this is simple. It's lobbying groups, eh? They've been lobbied to do this. I mean, it's industrial lobbying, and they got given a big pile of cash basically to say something nice about genetic engineering, and now suddenly they want to deregulate labeling requirements for GMOs in Europe, and now they also want to deregulate the authorization procedure for new GMOs made with CRISPR technique, which is at this point pretty much all of them anyway. So they basically want to throw open the European market to genetically engineered food, and at the same time not tell you that this is what you're eating. It's crazy if you think about it. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. And why are they saying this? What is their argument to defend this drive that they're doing to GMO Europe, basically? Why do they want to genetically modify our food that we are eating and even tell us about this? Well, according to Mrs. von der Leyen, she said that, well, you know, in the US they're already doing this, and in Japan they're also already doing this. So it's better for Europe's competition in the genetic engineering field that we also allow genetically engineered food just on our market like this, because they're all doing it in the US and in Japan. Of course, they're doing a lot in US and Japan, that's true, which is why so many Americans are right now in Europe, because we don't do shit that the Americans do. I mean, I've talked to like an American girl who works in a bio shop in town that I visit. And I told her about this, and she said, oh shit, because they do that in America, and I don't want that shit to come here, because they do lots of shit in America. They do lots of crazy stuff in America. And it's nice to live in Europe where they don't do that crazy stuff that they do in America. That's Americans coming to Europe, by the way, who are trying to run away from their own damn country to Europe, because life is still more normal here than it is over there. For the moment, we don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know how long it's going to last. We know that this stuff isn't exactly normal in Europe either, but it's still better, marginally better than over in the States. But when it comes to the European Commission and Mrs. von der Leyen, how she wants to open that up. She wants to say exactly like they're doing it in the US, so why not do this in Europe? Because everything they do in the US, we also have to do in Europe. That is the entire strategy of the EU, basically, the European Commission. Everything that they do in the US, everything that they do in Washington, we're going to do in Europe as well. We're going to do in Brussels as well. I mean, we can see this as well with Timmermans, who is the other villain in this story, by the way, who said that genetically engineered, genetically modified organisms should become what did he say? A cornerstone of Europe's Green Deal. A cornerstone of Europe's Green Deal. Think about how crazy this is. Genetic engineering should become a cornerstone of saving Europe's environment. What? What the actual hell is this kind of craziness? Because think about this, when you're actually green, and you want to save the environment, you want to save nature, what do? You actually save plants, you want to keep them as much the same as possible. You want to take care of them, make them strong, take out as well, remove any exotic pests that just invade their environment, they don't belong there. But here you have Europe's Green Pope. Here you have Frans Timmermans, who's basically saying that let's just deregulate genetically engineered organisms. Let's just make it easier for scientists and producers who like this sort of thing, who want to make a quick buck. Let's just make it easier for them to take their genetically engineered creatures, because they're also creatures, and plants as well. And we're going to make it easier for them to just let these animals and these plants out in the wild, in nature, where they can interbreed with Europe's native fauna and flora. And we'll see what happens, eh? I mean, this is a huge threat, a direct threat to Europe's nature and environment. This is a direct threat to Europe's natural environment. And this is why it is so bizarre that Europe's Green Pope, Europe's Commissioner for the Environment and the Climate and shit like that it is that guy who decided, let's make it easier for genetic engineering. Let's make it easier for gene engineers to let out the little Frankenstein monsters into our European environment. Let's make it easier for this direct threat to Europe's nature and natural environment. It is bizarre if you think about it. It is bizarre. But fine. This is what happens when you can buy a commissioner's vote, basically, with just a big pile of cash. Hey, this is what happens. We know that corruption in Brussels and in Strasbourg, it's a huge problem that nobody actually wants to face and nobody wants to fix. This is true. We know this. I mean, we've seen Cuttergate, and that's just one of the big scandals that actually made it into the news. It's not the only one, of course. I mean, there are plenty. I've talked about more than enough. So we know that corruption is actually a problem, and that corruption in Europe is something that we need to fix if we actually want to save and reform the EU into something that actually functions. Can we do that? Well, we must try. Because what's the other option? The other option is that Europe will fall apart, that you'll have Nexits and Dexits and Belxits and Italics and whatever, that the EU is going to fall apart and we're going to have to start over, which is the extreme solution. Might it be a better idea to just fix the EU and make it democratic, and let's ask people who live there, ask the Europeans, what the hell do you want really? What do you have to say about this? Let's vote. And if you ask the average European and talk to them about something as simple as labeling laws for genetically engineered ingredients in your food, what do you think they'll say to that? Do you honestly think they will say that, let's just deregulate this, let's just make it easier for the gene engineers, let's just make it easier for the genetically engineered Frankenstein plants to invade our natural environment? Do you honestly think that they will say this? No, I don't think so. But of course, the average European has never been consulted about this. Never. But frankly, I think this is a disastrous plan. I think that we need to always keep labeling laws for genetically engineered ingredients. We always need to keep strict labeling laws, which means that whenever you eat anything that is genetically engineered, whenever you want to buy something and it contains genetically engineered ingredients, it should say so on the package with a big ass red warning label saying genetically engineered. It's the least, because knowing what you eat is important, and people should have the choice if they want to do this, if they want to stick this into their mouths or not. You should always have the choice, right? You should have the choice of what you eat and to know what you're eating. But they want to take this away from us. They want to take the choice away from us, and they want to take the knowledge of what we are eating away from us. And I don't believe this is a good thing. I think this is actually really terrible. So we need to honestly fight this to the utmost. We need to fight this to the utmost. Which is, by the way, why I have already drafted a open letter to the European Parliament. Just like my previous one about the digital euro. And I'm going to send this, and it basically explains, why we don't need this, why these laws, these labeling laws, should remain and should actually, if possible, because it should be possible, actually be increased. I mean, honestly, I think that we should just ban GMOs in Europe to begin with. Europe does not need genetically modified crops. We don't. Europe is a net exporter of food. We've always been a net exporter of food, even though Europe is not the sunniest continent on this planet, Even though farming is actually harder in Europe than in, let's say, large parts of Africa, South America, Asia. Farming isn't the most easiest thing in Europe. But despite that, we are a net exporter, and we are still a net exporter of food across the globe. We feed ourselves. Europe has always fed itself. We still feed ourselves. And that's something to be proud of, if you can feed your own. The point of this is that, Europe does not need genetically engineered crops to feed ourselves. We don't need it. We just need to help farmers just farm. And they can farm in a biological way. They can farm in a natural way. They can farm in an ecological way. Farming and nature can actually go together. It doesn't need to be industrialized, because industrialized farming is like the same thing as GMO. It's two sides of the same coin. But farming and nature, they can go hand in hand, and we can create healthier food this way. And by allowing GMOs on the market without even a label saying that they're GMOs, is not a way to create healthier food, is not a way to create healthier people. It's not a way to create a healthier European society. Absolutely not. It's just a way to line the pockets and the bank accounts of a very select few politicians and a very select few food producers. So I am against this, 100% against this. And I hope you will join me in being against this, because this is important. It's about our food. So I hope you'll join me in being against this. And I hope you'll read my letter, and I hope you'll give your support and your signature, and you'll stay in touch with me to find out, what the hell is going on with this. Because I'm not giving up on this. I'm not giving up on anything. So stay in touch, and while you're at it, please just, also give a big thumbs up for this video. Helps. Subscribe to the channel. Keep in touch. Do all those important things as well, just to help me out and help yourself out, and also help Europe out a bit, because we need to work together to save the EU. We need to work together to save Europe, and we need to work together to make Europe democratic and free and sane again. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.